Hi, and welcome to AI for UX. This is the place where UX researchers, product leaders, and others stay current with AI innovations for research. So I'm John Whalen, and the founder of Brilliant Experience, and we're a psychology-driven product innovation firm. So in each installment of AI for UX, we speak to a founder of one of the latest AI-enhanced research tools and dive deep into how it might help you and the inspiration for the tool and kind of where the whole industry is headed. So today I'm delighted to be joined by Prajwal Paudyal, and he's the founder and CEO of Qualz.ai, a tool that is designed by researchers for researchers to streamline the entire qualitative research process and enhance the speed, accuracy, and cost efficiency of insight generation while preserving the nuances of human-centered research. So just a really quick note, these videos are not product endorsements. We always pay full price for any of our technologies here at Brilliant, and no one's getting paid. It's just for everyone to learn more together. So with that, let's get started. So thank you so much for agreeing to be here and talk with us. I'm delighted to have you.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you so much.
Of course. And well, let's dive into Qualls. So maybe you can just tell me a little bit about who it's for and sort of the sort of pain points it addresses and sort of the benefits of using it.
Yeah, of course, of course. So I'm Prajwal. Thank you for the great intro. So Qualls, we actually started with three big sort of barriers that we saw in research, and those barriers have to do with time, cost, and expertise, right? So time-wise, we have this thesis that research shouldn't be really like almost like a quarterly event, right? It should be more of a pulse. But doing that pulse with surveys, or as it's traditionally done, loses that human insight and nuance and stuff, right? So there is a big opportunity with AI to help with that time time barrier, and then the cost barrier where you have insights should be a because it should be done more frequently, right? It should be a small line item and then not like a rare, almost like a splurge that you need to do to figure something big out, right? So the time and cost, and the third point that we saw that needed to be addressed and could be addressed with AI is the expertise barrier, right? So it's great for folks like yourself that you have the experience and the expertise to do research in a very methodical way without introducing a lot of bias. But for a lot of product teams and startup founders, etc., right? Great interviewing is about asking the right questions. And that you just don't have the training for that, right? So we started Qualls to address these three barriers. And it's great to be in this podcast because I really like how AI for research spotlights like real practice, right? So beyond just the what should be done kind of thing, right? What's actually
Mm-hmm.
being done. So really excited for doing that. Now, the second part of your question was who's it
Sure.
for? So primarily,
Yeah, please go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah, go ahead, Doctor.
Oh, no, I love it. So please go ahead, Prajwal. Cool.
Yeah, I mean, who we built it for was mainly like product leaders or UX researchers, and research agencies that support that kind of early stage discovery, concept tests, and really integrating this research into the iterations sprints, right? We've had founders, product managers, researchers usually as our customer base, and really excited to be supporting that customer base because both of us, like our founders, founding team, also come from that background. So we just try to lean in and really live through the journey and then solve the problems that would help them do their job better.
Cool. Yeah, it's amazing how much faster we can go, and also just I think people have trouble understanding how much more research they can do potentially because of
Hmm.
the cost savings or the speed with which we can go. So it can be a sort of rethink of how we approach it and much more continuous.
Hmm.
I remember the days when I was like, okay, this quarter we can interview the 24 people and we got to get every question we can think of in them. And so
Right.
this is much more iterative and dynamic, really, to adaptive
Hmm.
to what the entity needs strategically.
Right.
So, well, what would be a typical, I think you mentioned a little bit, but maybe you can just tell me when I'm a, product leader or UX researcher, how might what would be like a typical scenario when I'd be using Qualls?
Yeah, so let's say you're a product leader or even a founder in a startup or something, right? So you have all these things that you can build, not and then you have a sense of priority of which order you should build them on and what kind of pain points that you think it'll solve, right? So now you have all these ideas or features and you can flush them out like technically how to build them and stuff like that. But what is really missing right now is the pulse from the customer standpoint, right? You might have access to some people that you talk with regularly or some existing customers, or you might even come from the customer base, but there's a whole wide world out there that could be potential users or you're targeting that you don't have a connection with, right? So now with platforms like Qualz.ai, you can define interview agents basically that have all that context of what you're building, what your company does, or what you're trying to solve, and just have very unbiased sort of deep conversations with them, right? And because, like you mentioned, with the speed and the cost barriers and some of the expertise barriers being removed, you can launch it almost like on a Friday and then get results on Monday, right? So with that being said, like a, a, a typical usage might be here's a new feature that I want to launch, and let me describe it in some details, and then let me actually look at how it solves a customer journey from the standpoint of how do they do it right now, right? So what is the alternative they're using? How much maybe there is how much budget they can allocate for it, right? How are they actually sort of like solving it right now, and what pain points comes to mind, right? So just being able to get that answer and then auto prioritize what you're gonna build, like both product wise and feature wise, right? So that's where we've seen the maximum impact from how it could be used.
Sure. No, it makes perfect sense. And yeah, I just, yes, because it just makes so much sense. Well, I did want to ask you, Qualls is an interesting thing where you're offering sort of a more survey style or dynamic interviews, and we'll see that in just a sec. But what makes Qualls a little different? Because there are some things now that allow us to do sort of dynamic follow ups and stuff with interviews. And so tell me a little bit about Qualls and sort of your speciality there.
Yeah, so we actually started so now we have different kind of interview types, but we started with more of the initial discovery type interviews where you're trying to just have conversations with customers, the potential customers, almost trying to figure out the job to be done, right? So what are they actually how do they do things now, and what specific thing they can mention, which gives you those aha moments, right? So it's much more on the discovery standpoint. So the interviews are built a bit differently, um, in that it can be structured, it can be very, very unstructured, like topic based, and the AI that's actually asking the questions is very, very agentic in a sense that it knows your objectives, it knows where you want to go, and it's also a good researcher because that's how I built it. So it's gonna just be able to have that very open-ended sort of like conversations and ask the five whys and whatnot, right? That's something that typically we don't see out like in an AI setting.
Mm-hmm.
Like you mentioned, it's more like, hey, let's ask a couple of follow-up questions, but there is this particular script that you follow, right? You could do that with Qual's AI, but we think that a lot of the insights are where like longer conversations tend to lead.
Cool. No, I'm looking forward to seeing you in a sec too. Just before we do, I wanted to ask when people are thinking about working with a tool like yours, just I think that and you might have seen this from your customers, how they have sort of changed their approach, where they used to do it one way, and now they're approaching research or they're thinking about what it will give them so differently. So how do you see people working with a tool like yours and how they're working differently once they have it?
Yeah, yeah. So I think that's been an important realization for us as well, because with all the technologies in the past, it was sort of like incremental improvements to the existing process, right? But with AI, what we've seen is it's a whole redefinition, and the people that are successful, the customers that are successful, come in with that open mind that let's go back to first principles, right? Let's think about what we're actually trying to achieve and not think about things like scheduling hassles that are no longer a thing, right? Or even like how do I look at the results from a particular angle because this is how everybody in the company has typically done it. I've seen some companies like swear by voice of customer or jobs to be done, right? But with AI, you don't really have to make those trade-offs. So the way people are approaching now is that more from a perspective of like why not, right? Rather than why, because the cost and the speed barriers are
Yeah.
really lowered. So why not just like do this research, right? Because that insights will help you in some sense. And why not look at it from a different perspective? Look at it from like 10 different perspectives because it's all the same with AI. That's one thing we've seen. And the other thing that we have seen is like AI is more of a spotlight, right, rather than a like a crystal ball or something, right? So it's not a panacea that you just connect AI and then your life gets simple, but you have this very, very powerful spotlight to look into different sections. So people are spending a whole lot more time into exploration of these nuances and just spinning up another study because they learned something and they can do it within the timeline for before the next release or something, which
Mhm.
is something that wasn't possible before.
Yeah, I think that we've seen the same that like faster cycles of iteration just because we can. And then you've
Hmm.
got more discrete things you're thinking about. And also just historically people thought like, hey, let's just answer these most important tier one questions. And now we're like, oh,
Hmm.
this actually opens up a whole new realm of these other questions that can finally be addressed, though we didn't even know we could. So it's really
Right.
interesting that way. Also, I guess we've seen, and I'm sure you have too, that just you can be more inclusive in doing more like a global population because of AI
Correct.
and
Hmm.
multilingual capabilities. Well,
Right.
cool. And part of what you do is analysis too. So I guess I just wondered what you do to sort of strategize to avoid things that people commonly think of when they think of AI, like potential hallucinations of something that happened that didn't, or bias. And so, how are you approaching those kind of problems with quals?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the it's almost like a feature of how these AI systems are built is that they are built to complete almost like a thought or a sentence or something, right? So if we don't use them correctly, what happens is that they will continue the conversation or try to fill in the gaps any way which they could, right? So there's a big potential for things like hallucination and then things like bias because of the training data set and stuff like that. The way we approach this is from the very ground up. So when asking questions, there is like multiple sort of guardrails and review process, and also there is these almost like constitutions on what makes a good interview, right? And we reframe the questions all the time as they're being asked. And on the analysis side, so everything is tied back to a quotation that a user said. So the interpretation that is somehow just like appears in some of this analysis is not the most important part, right? So you can look at the interpretation, but you also look at exact quotations that the AI can surface up, and then you make the decision whether or not that makes sense, right? If it doesn't, is that opportunity to do another research, or is it an opportunity to just look at it from a different lens? It's just like working with humans in a sense, but also like the intelligence is a little bit alien. So we understand that, and we've just built the platform more as a exploration tool rather than an exact answer that you get, right? So you get lots and lots of like insights because the AI is able to parse through the data at a much faster and much more comprehensive way. But at the same time, it's always grounded back to something that somebody said, right? You can scroll back to the video and be like, okay, yeah, so AI got like 90% of that right. But here's an additional interesting thing that I realized because I've been in this field for like 30 years or something, right? So whatever that is, we just always tie it back to what somebody said.
Very cool. And yeah, I think as a researcher, I love to be able to go back and see the source and the context. And also, right, our product people and stuff probably have deep expertise in the field they're talking about. So there could be some nuance
Hmm.
there. Yeah, it makes perfect sense to let us sort of be in the driver's seat, but this just accelerates our ability. So, I
Correct.
mean, to give people a sense, like our team works way more in insights and analysis and storytelling and strategic things, and so much less on the just actually mechanics of doing an interview. And so I think it helps all of us to do things really differently. Very cool. Well,
Hmm.
we've talked about it a lot. Maybe we can go ahead and see a little bit of Qualls as well. So here, I'll work on the technology, and maybe you could just frame kind of the scenario we're going to work on and what we'll be seeing.
Yeah. So what I was thinking of doing is just going through the website, which is Qualz.ai, and I already have a login, of course, but anybody that wants to try it, you can try pretty much all of the features that I will show with just free sign up. So all you need to do is get started for free, and then there's a couple screens of registration, and then you can go and try it. After you try it, and then you find some usage, you can either just go schedule a demo, and then we can walk you through the platform, or you can do your own self-serve. Just like create a study or do some analysis. So after you log into the platform, so I'm already logged in here. What you'll see is we have two data collection mechanisms, three really, but the primary ones are surveys. So we call them dynamic surveys because they have a voice-based input and you can ask for some elaborations for some questions, right? So I'll focus less on this. I'll try to just go more on the interview side because that's more interesting, and then that can be more like open-ended and much more conversational than the dynamic surveys. So the next thing you see is interviews. So we have two mechanisms. So really, if you had any interviews that you had already conducted, let's say you have audio, video, or text files of interviews, you can just go in here and go through the upload flow. So this allows you to not just do transcription, but it also allows you to do diarization, right? So you can upload it, and then we do some like the AI does figures out who's talking, and then also tags them by role, like interviewer, participant, whether it's a focus group or a in-depth interview. So that flow is for you to upload your data because we've noticed that a lot of people still at least have some of the conversations themselves, right? So that's that flow, and the other one is to create an interview. So we can try creating an interview, and here we can just say, let's say like startup founders trying to understand or understand um, product fits for a particular customer base. So what this allows you to do is, I mean, this is just a title. I'll just leave that as an objective, but the most important thing is to set what your objective is. And there's a more detailed view where you can set much more details about where this project came from and what the detailed objectives are. And you can put as much details as you want here. And then you have three options right now, which is do you want to conduct a semi-structured, a structured, or an unstructured interview? And I'm going to select unstructured for now. And then we have these time limits, right? So what we have noticed is that AI interviews tend to be a lot shorter than human interviews because there's a lot less like back and forth dynamic between just humans, right? We gotta just like chit chat a little bit, but with AI, we can get straight to the point sometimes. Here's where you set the limit, and that's a hard limit on how long the interview will be. And at this point, the AI can start helping you come up with like research questions. So I just had a very generic objective here, but if you had more objective, it's gonna give you some research questions, and this really guides um, the analysis as well as the actual interview to some extent. And from here, based on all of that, you can generate your interview guidelines, and this takes into account everything that you put here.
So,
And that,
oh,
yes, go ahead.
sorry to interrupt. So Prajwal, so those research questions are essentially the sort of strategic questions, rather than the ones that will actually be in the interview.
Correct.
Got it.
Correct. So these are the strategic questions. You don't have to put three of them there, right? You can just have like a very pointed 5 minute interview where you just have like one core question that you're trying to solve. And then that's fine. You can also add like more research questions if you're doing a larger interview. And these will be answered incrementally as your interview transcripts start coming in. And that's really powerful because um, you can look at the research questions, some of the answers that are coming in, and then decide that, hey, I want to change the interview slightly, right? For the next 10 folks that will do the interview, right? And you have that capability as well because these questions are answered incrementally
Oh, Prajwal,
as the
sorry.
interview.
Yeah, no, really interesting. So, I'm sorry to jump in again, but it's really cool. Um,
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen a tool that lets us do like structured versus semi-structured. I think that's what you selected versus unstructured. Can you just tell
Mhm.
us generally, if I wasn't a researcher, what do those three things mean?
Yeah, so there's some guidelines here that you could read on what these interview types are. But if you essentially do a structured interview, it will be conversational, but it will stick to the script, so to speak, right? So it's going to go through
Hmm.
your questions one at a time, and there is no additional probing a sector that comes out of it. But if you do a semi-structured, then you can see that AI suggests some probes. A lot of folks just like have a sense of what questions they want to ask, right? So this is just a recommendation according to the objectives and the research questions, but you can always go and say, I want two or three probes for this question, and you can keep diving sort of like deeper into this. But essentially, a semi-structured would be that you ask a question, and according to the answer, the probe will be asked or not asked or changed in some sense, right? So there's like some guidelines to it. It might take some time getting used to, unless you're already a researcher, right? But if you do an unstructured, it's going to be much more topic based. Let's see if this picks up. So it's going to be based upon the particular high level topics.
Hmm.
So there's a purpose for asking this question, and then what kind of flow, and then how much time you want to allocate per topic, right? As you can see, there's like three or four topics, and AI will just go and talk around this topic, right? This is very, very useful for earlier stages of discovery almost, right?
Hmm. Very cool. No, I'm glad I asked. That I think that's a really it's interesting how it sort of redesigns the whole flow. So cool. Well, let you continue. Very nice.
All right. So that's pretty much it for like designing a, a interview study. And after you do that, you have some configurations. For example, if you want to ask an email, if you want to secure the study, I will enable the advanced AI moderated interview. So this just means that it is much more back and forth voice based rather than it being you hold your mic, you answer, and then it shows up as a text. So this is the one that I'll demo, and then you have like several language options. We also tell you like how good we are with those languages. I'm just gonna select English, and then you have some options as far as voice, right? You can hear them out. And you can set the number of participants. So I'll set it as 10 for this. And then you can do some additional configurations and generate a welcome message. So it's just going to generate something, but of course, like people want their own welcome message, you can drop in your audio, video, or any other things that you want to show to the participants as they begin the research. And that's pretty much it. So this creates a link And this link is what you'll share. And you have some options and also creating like redirects or tracking IIDs and stuff like that, right? So all those will be in the documentation. And yeah, this is pretty much it. So let me sh make sure I'm sharing my sound and I can go and start the interview and this will just go through. Okay, let me make sure I'm sharing my sound. All right, share sound. All right, did you have any questions before we start the interview?
No, no, I was actually interested to see it roll. So please go ahead, and if we have any challenges, we can fix that sound. But
All right,
cool.
sounds
So
good. Yeah, so
this is the welcome message just made.
yeah, just made. So we just
Mm-hmm.
made that welcome message. You could have dropped a video intro and stuff like that, as a lot of people do, or just some images, right? Uh, and if I had asked for additional consent or email or something, right, it would take us there. But for simplicity, it's just a welcome message that we set up here. And once we hit begin interview, I think because I'm sharing my video here, I won't be able to turn on the video, but I'm just gonna go through a couple of turns of questions. So I'll leave the camera off, but here's where you can test your device and then make sure everything is working. And then here's some consent for being recorded because I asked for like an audio version, right? So that audio would be recorded.
Hi there. I'm an AI interviewer here to have an open conversation about how startup founders assess product market fit for a specific customer base. Let's start by talking about how you identify the needs and preferences of your target customer base. How do you typically go about that?
Yeah, so I mean, it used to be that we have a very strong sense of a customer base that we want to, solve the problem for, and then we would just build a product around that, and then go experiment, and then we'd learn something else, and then start with a new customer base. But with AI moderated research now, we have the unique capability of just being able to um, have these in-depth interviews with multiple customer bases and really understand their journey, their pain points, much ahead, right? So before that, we launched the actual product. So that has changed a little bit. But overall, it's just having conversations is how I'd answer that question.
I see. So it sounds like conversations have always been key, but AI has helped you get a deeper understanding earlier on. Could you walk me through how those initial assumptions about your customers may have evolved over time?
Yeah, so the initial assumptions over like the customer base is usually like startup founders, in my opinion, start with some notion of what that customer base looks like, either from their own experience or some earlier customers. But once you start having two customers or three customers or 10 customers, right, you learn a whole lot of new things about that particular segment. And for me, it has always been just being able to have those conversations and getting that time. It's like 90% learning at the very beginning. But at some point, you just can't scale yourself to have all these conversations, right? So having that ability to still hold those conversations and letting people express themselves completely and fully while still, like servicing the amount of clients that you have time for to get on a one-on-one call. That is super important for me. And AI has helped with that process a lot.
That makes sense. There's a big shift once you start engaging with more customers directly.
All
So
right,
moving
so
on to
let's end the interview here.
Mm-hmm.
I know we said like 15 minutes, but you can close the interview, and then I'm sure this transcript will be useful.
Of course, thank you so much for your time and insights. Interview concluded.
Interesting.
All right, so that was the interview process, right? I kind of
Yeah.
kept it unstructured, so you can see it was just exploring according to how I led the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
It still has those topics in mind, so it's going to touch upon them, right? So that's a little bit different in terms of how the different interviews can flow. But if it was a structured, it would go through those questions and
Mm-hmm.
say thank you for your response, kind of like move on to the next question.
Yeah. A, it's really interesting to see that, and B, your responses were quite long, and it sort of caught that pretty quickly. We've
Mm.
actually found with it's actually interesting even to see the interface. So we have to, we've got a whole new way to create something. So you've got sort of two sort of you've got the sort of waveform interviewer there, and you're doing voice to voice, but it was doing a good job of not interrupting you or just like it seemed very relevant what it was following up with. So it's really interesting to see how that happens. Um,
Yeah, there's some configurations there. You can have how the AI interviewer pauses or how it detects pauses and stuff like that, right? So there's some additional advanced configurations. We also had some avatars and something over there, but it was really a little bit of uncanny valley there, right? So
mhm,
we got some feedback that it's not that important. But another thing that I didn't do there was you could turn on your video, of course, right? And we have some
mhm,
video intelligence models that can look into the video, right? So we have that as
mhm.
custom project workflow now. It'll do some prosody detection and stuff like that. And we also have an ability to share your screen. So if you, I didn't turn on that right now, but then there was an option to just share my screen. So it's super useful if you're sending, let's say, a Figma prototype or something, right? And have people just do a think aloud there. You'll have to set up the interview in that way. You'll have to
Mhm.
let the AI know that it's a think aloud session, right? Where participant will be sharing their screen.
Sure. Um, Interesting. And I'm anticipating that right now, and I know you've got some amazing capabilities already, but um, it's not interpreting what's on the screen yet. It's just using voice for the interaction in that case.
Yeah, currently it's not interpreting anything live on the video, but I think that is changing very fast. Yes.
Hmm. Okay, I'll let you leave it at that. Excellent.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you wanted to show us? You're welcome to, or was that about what you want to
Oh yeah,
cover?
yeah. So I can show you a little bit on what that looks like from an analysis standpoint, right? So the interview that I just done here will start showing up as a transcript. Looks like it's still processing it. So it's here now, and then you can. So we support a exploration researcher-friendly workflow as well. And we also support just out of the box. You just want to get a lot of insights from AI and you want to do it really fast and then spend some time on it, right? So you can tag that transcript. For example, you can like assign tag, this was a startup founder or whatever that customer base is. And then you'll get a summary like right away. And these are the research question answers, right? So you have some quotations that I mentioned here. And then you can right away go into like analysis, right? So we have several different lenses for analysis. You can do a classical sort of like thematic analysis, and you just select it. And then I only have one transcript here, so it's just going to run on that one transcript. And that's going to just like start the analysis process, and you'll get the results in a couple of minutes. But you can also do multiple analysis at the same time, right? So let me look at jobs to be done. I know the interview is short, so the analysis will be not that thorough, but you can also do a sub segment for I want to run a jobs to be done analysis, and I'm a segment by some tags I had, right? Between, let's say, people in the US versus people outside of the US, for example, right? So all these will start to show up in like a couple of minutes, but I'll show you something that has already been done just to show you the details of what that might look like. So we had a similar interview with five human participants, and we added 10 AI participants there. And then this was similar, but a little bit different in terms of what the interview questions were. So there were about 15 transcripts, and then some of them have audio, video, and some of them I've already tagged, right? So this was an engineer, designer, and you see these details, and what you see is like AI reading through all the turns and then tagging them. So this participant was talking about role identification, for example, growth phase, right? Then you can go in here and this particular tag, you can see what the definition of the tag is based upon all the places it was uh, applied to, right? And then you see it appeared 19 times throughout the entire study, and there is a summary of all the conversations where it appeared, right? And then you can scroll to, okay, I want to look at like transcript 9, and then this is exactly the portion of text that was highlighted as growth phase. Uh, Tested, and we're planning to secure further investments to help expand our operations, for example, right? So they were talking about growth, so this particular tag was applied there. So that's at a transcript by transcript level. But you can also look at like all the different types of analysis that was here, right? For example, the one that I ran earlier, the thematic analysis, you can get your code book, which is, typically what like researchers use to organize their uh, research flow. So you can download your code book, and there is a category definition, summary, and codes, and then you can go into your themes, and you'll see all the themes that appeared in this transcript, right? So there is some themes, and then some categories, and all the different codes that were included, right? Some have high saliency, which means they appeared a lot more times. And then you can go and see like your other visualizations as well. And very interestingly, you can also keep doing like the different types of analysis. For example, there's a narrative arc analysis, just like thematic analysis. There's multiple of these, right? You can look at jobs to be done, and then you get your priority insights, and then what were the emotional and social type like jobs that were identified, and where were they, right? So there's a whole lot more detail for folks that want to keep exploring this. And then if you don't want to use one of these lenses, you can also turn on what we call like a deep search. And then let's say I'm interested in these two transcripts, and you can pretty much ask anything you want here. And what were the jobs mentioned here from a JTBD perspective? So it's going to answer just based on those two transcripts. And this is a deep search, so it's going to actually think about it and then like read the responses and give you some sources and citations and that kind of stuff, right? So it's kind of thinking about it, and everything that you see, you can start building your custom report on.
Well, excuse me, it's really extensive in terms of the types of sort of deep, like thematic analysis, jobs to be done, and so on. Um, how are you finding? So for us, like hardcore research nerds, I'm like, oh, this is awesome, like super fun. How are you finding folks that are maybe designers or product people, and how do you kind of help guide them to what's the most relevant for them?
Yeah, so we built all these working with customers. So all these lenses are almost fit a personality type. So when you go to run lens, you can see, okay, I'm actually doing a design and build. So we have some catered experiences for, let's say, like designers that want to understand some kind of jobs to be done or customer journey pain points, right? So we ask them to start here, right? It doesn't hurt to run other lenses and get some interesting insights from that lens. But you can do just this. Let's say I want to understand just the customer journey and then select it here. You can also build your own sort of like lens by asking particular questions. And the other thing you can do is like once you run a particular lens, for example, if I had run a jobs to be done map and that's all I care about, each and every transcript will have details about what was uncovered from that lens. And this is where you'd focus on, right? For your product decisions, for your like even like prioritization, a roadmap or something like that. And we have these guidelines for different persona types on the website.
Wow, no, very cool. And uh, yeah, more than we have time to talk about, I guess, in our short meeting. But it's a really, really interesting, and I don't think I've seen quite such an extensive list. So well done on making that
Yeah,
happen.
thank you. Thank you.
Uh, is there anything you wanted to say about reports just before we move on and just talk more generally?
Yeah, so for us, like reports are there's like so much details in here according to the lenses you run. So those are almost like reports in and of themselves. But for us, like anything that you find interesting can be easily added to a report. So the way we've seen people use the report feature is that they build reports for different sort of stakeholder personas. So you might go in here and say like I want to create a report for um, like my engineer or my technical lead or my manager or something, right? And then just do some exploration here and keep adding things that make sense to your report, including like diagrams, visuals, those kind of stuff. So that's how we build the report.
Very cool.
It's almost like a memo, right? Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's interesting that you can essentially have one for different, like I know we've been talking about lenses a lot, but different personas, I guess I should say. So our
Hmm.
marketing person or our technical person
Right.
and so on.
Hmm.
How interesting. And just to take a step back, we just saw a sort of discussion interview, but we can do, I guess you mentioned Figma prototypes, so we can do things like concept testing. Um,
Correct.
and just lastly, with surveys, I know you kind of skipped over that at the start, but it struck me that they're a little different than just what I would do in Qualtrics or SurveyMonkey or something. That it has some dynamic components. Is that appropriate? I'm just learning, so if I'm wrong, I apologize.
No, it's exactly that. So we try to focus more on for surveys, we try to focus more on the qualitative components. So there is for any questions that you ask, you can add some like an elaboration prompt basically, which is going to ask the users to elaborate on the answers. Or you can make it optional or you can make it required, and you can essentially start getting some verbatims for like as a response to these questions. And what we have found, what we've learned is like a lot of folks used to ask a lot of categorical ranking type, like very complex questions, right? But now with AI and like tools like Qualz AI, you don't really need to go into that much detail because you can do a categorization, including sort of quantification of the responses post hoc, right? So you kind of ask your
Mm-hmm.
question and you give some hints on what type of response you want, right? For example, did you face any challenges, right? You don't have to ask them, was it like timing or scheduling wise or, logistical environment or, whatever that is. But all this will be done post hoc and you get a lot of details in here as well, right? You can also update sort of your themes and then you can ask the AI to say, hey, I want these categories. Can you go and find them, right? So this is the thing that we're seeing that changes surveys a lot because now you can really just ask questions and let people talk through their
Mm-hmm.
responses.
So it's both a survey and basically I can talk through these open-ended responses rather than typing them in.
Correct, correct. So
Yeah.
instead of really asking all these categories and having to know beforehand, right, what
Mm-hmm.
type of options you want to give, you can still do that, right? Because you can ask like scale questions and stuff like that. But even with those, you can ask, can you elaborate at the end, right? So that reveals a lot more than, just a regular quantitative question will tell you, right? So for example, this question could be framed a lot differently now that you know that you can get the scaling even later if you need it to, right? So unless you're doing some instrument that you really want these numbers, which can be very brittle anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
You could ask them as a like an open-ended question. I ask this question and say, can you elaborate on your response?
It really is a sea change where we can essentially get some quant data out of a large scale of interviews, and then the reverse. This is, so you're really blending this notion of, qualitative versus quantitative. It makes sense.
Right.
And it's interesting how we can sort of unbiased. It's a real sea shift for our quant folks to not have like, well, I've got these categories. How many people pick this category? Instead, let's let the categories be defined by what people openly share as opposed to us boxing them in. Really
Correct. Correct.
yeah,
Yeah.
how cool. Well, that's a lot. I'm trying to take it all in. um, Very cool. I'm guessing that's everything you wanted to show us, but is there anything else before I
No,
move
no,
on?
like the last thing I'd want to talk about is just the AI
Oh, please.
audience. What we've noticed is that a lot
Yeah.
of times recruits are hard to get, right? And within Qual's AI, it's a more of an ecosystem where you can create a survey, and we've found a lot of customers just create like surveys and interviews, and they want to really test it, right? And they also want to, let's say, find out of like maybe 20 segments or uh, 20 different kinds of customers, what would be the baseline results be if you don't have a whole lot of idea about that customer segment or that journey or something, right? You can easily create very, very detailed personas here by just like creating AI audience of participants, and you can either start chatting with them or just send them any survey or any interview that you have already created, right? Either you can duplicate it or let's say like send it to 20 people, you learn something from that, you change your question, or you're like, okay, let's this is what AI said, which in my mind is almost like secondary research, right? And then you can send it to, real humans, and then you can do a comparison side by side. You can do a whole lot of explorations with that, or just change your questions, or, like learn something that'll help you make your product decisions faster. Because even like an in-depth interview with AI personas can be done, within an hour or something, even if you're doing like a 20 interviews. So that's the last feature that I'd like to mention, which we found that it's super useful in this age.
And I remember you showing an interview you did where essentially there might have been five, I think there were five human participants and 10 AI
Right.
participants. Do you, when you do analysis, I guess I have the option to blend those together or to do them
Correct.
independently? Okay.
Correct. So the way we framed our analysis is that you can first, like it automatically gets tagged by whether it was a human or an AI, right? You can
Hmm.
further tag it by any other behavioral or demographic details. And after you do all that, you can say, I want to do jobs to be done analysis on this subset, and it's going to give you a result. And then do another subset and look at them side by side, right? And learn something sort of like interesting for that particular group. So you don't necessarily have to define completely new studies or projects or something, right? You can just
Hmm.
send one massive study. Like some of our studies have like 500 responses, right? But you can always do detailed reports on a particular subsegment.
So interesting. Well, wow, there's lots to try. So, well, here, let me maybe take a big step back and talk. We've talked a lot about Qualls and all its capabilities. What I haven't got a chance to ask is a little bit about you. So, if I wanted to just say, there's so much you've accomplished in making this thing really rich with all sorts of possibilities. What inspired you to, go from being maybe a practitioner to being a product person and launch this for this field?
Yeah, so I mean, I come from a background in AI, so I did my PhD, and I was always working on these um, technological things, but with a strong human element on it. So I worked on like language learning applications for like American Sign Language during my like my academic years, right? So afterwards, too, I was aligned a lot with um, incubation or ventures team. So I was at Procter and Gamble for a little bit, and then after that at Deloitte, and I always um, understood that you can't really build a product in vacuum, right? You cannot build a service in vacuum. You have to talk to customers, and traditionally it was almost like a one-to-one process where building took a whole lot of time as well, right? And talking to customers took a lot of time, so it was a bit of a waterfall, and that made sense because you needed your sprints to actually make something happen. But what we've realized, and what I've realized as soon as we started seeing all these AI can help with let's say product development, right? So that has probably gotten like 5, 10 times faster if you believe the hype, right? But even if you don't, it has gotten significantly faster. But the other end of the spectrum is how do we close the insights gap with customers, right? So that seems to not have moved a whole lot. So that's what really inspired me to go and okay, let's start a company, and then like let's just go with the background of what I've faced and what my co-founder, who's an anthropologist, like knows, and then what how he has traditionally approached this, and how can AI really fit into the workflow without losing a whole lot of like the human insights piece, right? So trying to blend it, and the best way to do it was to just go and start something.
Very cool. I'm glad I asked. And it is amazing how we're increasingly, I find myself using AI to humanize things. And so it's such a funny mix, but it's the reality. Um,
Right.
well, I guess I wanted to get your sort of futuristic lens too. So, you've found and you're already capable of doing all these different things. We've got these dynamic no longer sort of fixed surveys. We've got really unstructured discussions you can create with people with these AI moderators. And then really sophisticated analysis that you can do in different ways. So you've already got that done. I guess I'm wondering where you see this all going. So in the next while, I had a question that I had originally wrote as the next few years, and I always kind of laugh at how fast things are changing. That I don't
Right,
know if anyone
right.
knows. But in
Yeah.
general, where do you see Qual's evolving, and how do you see this whole sort of research enterprise evolving, from your perspective?
Yeah, so my perspective has been that with AI, like we are, being able to build all these tools that can close the loop with like customers that might utilize our product and services better. But the way we deliver these products and services also is changing a lot, right? So now, I guess in the next few years or even shorter timeline, we are seeing products, especially like tech products, being much more intent driven. So it's not going to be a whole lot of like, this is built for humans to speed up a particular point in the process, but it's going to be what are people actually trying to do and how do we build these systems that are sort of out of your view almost, right? So that they happen in the background and they deliver the insights, right? So I think it just changes the way people interact with products in that it's much more conversational, maybe some feedback, and the human is always in the loop. So the wayfinding, as you mentioned it in your book, if I remember, is
Yeah.
is changing a whole lot, right? So it's not you have to wayfind in this very remote compute environment, right? That's okay. And then you also have to understand the mental model or the capabilities of your AI, which different people have different perspectives on. So I think having conversations of what people actually understand the AI being able to do, that is the type of conversations I think we'll be having. So that's why we're super excited about just having this ability for AI, like you said, to just bring up the mental models, right? So how they pathfind, how they understand technology into light, because that's going to be super important for how they use it, because a lot less will be visual, and we won't have as much constraints on the interface in the future.
Yeah, how interesting. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing. I think we all have to stay so curious and open to change and just keep experimenting. So, well, I'm so glad we had the opportunity to see Qualls and understand, where you're coming from in this very sophisticated background. If people actually want to give this a try, how can they get started with Qualls? I think you might have mentioned, but just to make sure everyone's got it.
Yeah, so the easiest way would be to just like sign up. So there's some sample studies. You can click around there. You can even deploy your own studies. And our big mission statement has been to lower the barriers. So there is a whole lot in the platform that you can do without necessarily like putting in your credit card. For example, we don't charge necessarily for surveys right now, right? So that might change in the future. But there's a lot of things on the platform that you can try yourself. But if you are interested in understanding how this might change your workflow or how you can adapt it, you can always book a demo. Like some person in our team, more than likely me or my co-founder, will jump on a call, and then we'll just happy to have a conversation.
Very cool. Well, I think at this point I just have to let you go. But thank you so much, Prajwal, for sharing Qualls with us. And yeah, what I'll do is I'll just sign us out. So everyone, that's all for today. Thank you so much for tuning in and keeping up with the latest on AI for research. And just let us know in the comments what else you'd like to see about Qualls and what you'd like us to feature next. So wishing you brilliant insights with AI and stay curious. Thank you.